No, I do not want your loving. Stay away from me. Don't want it. I don't want it. You got it all over me. Well, welcome back. It's not supposed to be this hot. Is my face really? Yeah, I think it's that red. So anyway, we have a breeze. It got a lot muggier this afternoon than we thought. Went down and watched some people we know, customers, friends, goat friends, whatever you want to say. Watch their daughter Colby. Watch them, show one of our animals down at the fair, some of her animals. One of our animals from a couple years ago. Was not that muggy before. It was actually cool this morning. I had the two littles with me and they could have actually used a jacket. But anyway, we're out here and we just moved Gypsy to her new trailer. Gypsy, we actually did not sell at the auction we were at. We decided to keep her back for the price she bought. I talked to somebody that was bidding on her afterwards, Logan and Olivia, so here's your shout out. But anyway, talked to them. They got in touch with Shayna. They came up with their 3 little girls today. But needless to say, when you show up at our farm, depending on your personality, if you're stuck with me, or in this case, Shayna was actually in an outgoing mood. She'll hate that I said that. But anyway, when you show up here, you need to expect at least 2 hours. You get to talking about goats or something like that, other things in life, or, like in this case, we had 7 kids running around that were all the same age, some stuff like that. And so, needless to say, our kids were tired from not having a nap. Their kids were tired and hungry. Everybody was burned out. But anyway, they just took Lucky Gypsy Curse home. And so good luck to them with Gypsy. She's going to be a great addition to your herd. So needless to say, what I'm doing now is I'm trying to avoid Brett chasing me down. He treats me like a rubbing toy all the time. But I'm going to top everybody off with some water here. I already got the other sides. He's got his horn caught in my pocket. I got all the other sides topped off already. I need to come over here in these 2 pins, the already bred pins, or at least exposed, and get their water topped off. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit of how we do something, kind of as a follow-up to Jason from Clear Creek. I left him a comment and said I would touch on some things that we do or have done in the past with our hay that could be another look, or some experiences we've had with his similar situation. So let me get the hose drug over, get away from Stinky Brett, who's trying to knock me over, and we'll get on with it. Okay, so let's do a little bit of hay feeding talk. So anybody that's seeing this, I'm going to try to tag Clear Creek in this. So maybe it'll come up. I've never tried to tag anybody on YouTube, but I know it's there. TubeBuddy and some places like that will track your tags. Anyway, if you're checking out this in relationship to what Jason was doing, so they were doing a panel and covering it to feed their hay before. Actually, here, let me stand behind the shed so I can block some wind. Anyway, so there we go. So what they were doing is they were using a panel, setting it down like a donut around the bale, and they were cutting holes out. It was doing good. Ultimately, what you run into a lot of times is that the goats can only reach so far in a panel. You can kind of only get bent around so much. I want to say it's Premier One or somebody has got panels that are pre-cut, but even then you'll have to slide them in, right? And so what we had a North Star. Oh, I sprayed this yesterday, so no more weed patches. But anyway, so you could try that. What he got now is he got a Tartar Feeder. It's a pretty short to the ground cradle feeder, and so it's only a couple feet off the ground. So even though it keeps the bale off the ground, ultimately it does not. Sorry, I'm watching Brett over here. He's playing with the hose and he's pulling it away from the stock tank. But anyway, he got a Tartar Feeder. It's a couple feet off the ground. He kind of made a roof for it, which I love those ideas like that, to help keep the hay good, especially if you're feeding a bale at a time. But what he said is it doesn't give the goats the ability to eat from the bottom, so they're still having to slough it off. So this goes along pretty similarly with what we found with our North Star Boer Goats feeder. We had the one at the time a few years ago. I want to say it was like $550 to buy one. Ours had the gates. So originally what I understood was they designed it, or some of these are designed so if you just have spears on the 3-point or on a pickup or something, you can still get a bale in there. And I would agree with that. You could, because I could, in the very right circumstance, with my 806 with a fast hitch, I could just get it up in there. You'd have to try to push it up in there, or if you had some build up hay, you could kind of drive up and get it in there. So it was possible without a tractor and a loader. The biggest worry we had was goats getting their heads in there and stuck, because what would happen is on a bigger 5x6 bale, we put up 4x5s, but on a 5x6, it would get hung up in the structure as they ate underneath of it, and then it wouldn't drop. And so you have the problem of basically worrying about a goat getting not decapitated, but strangled if that falls in there, right? So that was our worry. I never did build a roof. We used that for a year or two. Now we probably actually used that for 2 or 3 years now that I think about it. But it got to the point where our herd size went from bigger commercial to smaller percentage full-blood herd. And so we just don't have, right now, we just don't have as many animals on the place as we used to. So I sold that to a friend up the road, Cameron. He's using it. It works perfect. He backs into his shed. His lean-to he's got for his goats. He can drop a bale right in it. It keeps covered, keeps a fresh bale for them goats all the time. So it works great for him. For me, I was moving goats around, and so we actually went to more just standard pan hay feeders, right? And so if you watched any of my previous videos in my kidding shed and my 2 weaning sheds, I have the Tartar small animal feeders, which I really like those. They're all one-piece construction. The capacity on them isn't real big, so it depends on how many animals you have. But in the winter, when I'm using those, usually I'm in the alfalfa stages of kidding and having babies in there. So I usually have got either smalls of alfalfa that I can throw in there, and then they fit pretty decent. None of these hay feeders are designed for a bale to fit perfectly in them, but I use those over there. In our larger areas, I did have that bigger feeder. Now, what we've gone to, previously working at a farm store, you had, I'm going to flip you around, and the phone might catch some wind here, but we had these little giant hay feeders like this. The problem with those, I'm going to try to block some wind for you. The problem with those is that capacity's okay. 2 pretty good sized pitchforks of hay can fit in that basket. But as you can see here, they just weld a piece of flat strap with a hole in there and bolt it down. They send you stainless bolts, which, you know, great, but they bolt through there, okay? So this piece essentially has broke off on the other one, and it's just sheared it. It didn't break, you know, it's broke the weld off. And to me, you know, for these still being a $220 hay feeder or whatever they are now, they've come up 20 or 30 bucks. I just don't like this style, because when you get some of these bigger does, especially this pen, it's got some of our bigger does out here. The problem is they stand on it because they want to eat hay out of the top. And so they get to leaning on them, and then they get to shaking, because you got to, you have to keep those bolts tight. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see where that crossbar is. You got to keep those tight. And so it just becomes a pain in the butt. Then they get all wonky and they stand on them. And over the course of the night, they either come loose or they could break something or whatever. I've never had an animal hurt under one of those, but I don't care for them. So honestly, that one, just because of our animals and the way we feed, I don't care for that. Now, Palmyra Livestock in Palmyra, Nebraska, Brad down there, they carry the North Star Boer Goat stuff. And so what I have here is one of their 4-foot hay feeders. And I want to say they run around, they're a little bit more. They're like 250 or 60 bucks. something like that, I want to say. I don't remember exactly, but I think that's what they are. North Star Boer Goats has a price list on their website or with the pictures, and that's the same price that Brad and them charge. So that must be like a standard pricing. But anyway, if you look at this capacity versus this capacity, I can get, when I bring a pitchfork of hay out, it's a big pitchfork of hay. I can only get 2 in this, and I can get 3 in this. So right now I've got 5 does in here. These are probably my bigger senior does. They'll blow through that thing because it's just a dry lot pen. They'll blow through that in about 3 days, they'll blow through that feeder twice a day, and they'll usually see it's about feeding time and there's still a little bit left in there, so I can keep up on it. This one, usually they run out by evening chores. Now I can make sure I'm not wasting or overfeeding. I'm not worried about overfeeding. We give full feed. Hey, that's just the way we are. Whatever, we'll just give it to them. We don't restrict it, and then we give them X amount of grain a day. But we do this to make sure they can clean it up. There's not a lot of waste. Even in a rain, we'll make them kind of clean that up. Or if it's going to rain, we'll make sure we don't put as much out. But we do it twice a day. So if you go this method, it's more labor. Like anything, you still have the waste around. But this is a whole year's worth of waste here. By doing this, I only clean this out. I don't have a skid steer, and I do not have my loader on my tractor yet. I got to fix some brackets to make that work. So I usually have to borrow a skid steer, and that's usually only happens once a year. And so for what this is worth, if you had a bigger skid steer with a big grapple bucket, this is probably only about, if you really scrape this thing down in the dirt, there's probably only about 4 buckets worth of stuff in this pen. And that includes, let's get you over here. And that includes this pen over here, where it's very similar to the same thing. It's basically just whatever comes down. Sorry, the glare's so bad I can't see. So you've got that little bit of buildup, and then it kind of tapers off. So overall, the amount of waste I'd get out of a big bale, if I had a big bale in each one of these, my ground waste would be a lot higher just due to nature. And what I did do with ours after time is kind of like Jason did. I did get that 4x4 panel, and I laid it in the curve to create a slower feeding, because on the ends, the double gate of my hay feeder and the backside, it already had that welded onto it. So I already had that 4x4. So that is, like I said, I still had a lot of waste with that. Now what I do with this, and so they make an 8-foot version of this hay feeder, and that is actually, gosh, I don't know if we can't even see it. So I've got, it's actually kind of right over here somewhere. Sorry, the glare's too bad. But it's kind of right off that big post back there. So the 8 feeder, that thing will hold 5 or 6 giant pitchforks of hay. And so that'll get anybody in this kind of like pasture pen out here, that'll get them easily a couple days. But I love that 8-footer. Actually, what I could do is I could get 8-footers for these pens and do it once every day and a half or so. But it's nice to have the smaller feeders for some of these pens where you never have more than like 6, 7, 8 goats at a time max. A couple times a day, you can do that well. As you can see, the girls are getting some clean, cool, fresh water. So, like I said, you got to kind of determine what you're after. Like I said, this does require pitchforking. In this shed here, this is a 40x60. We keep our equipment. My father-in-law's hay equipment and stuff in there. I've got my feed bin. We keep all of our shavings. You've kind of seen that in the background before. But also what I do is I take a bale, and with my 3-point spears, I set it down, I pull out of it, and when I lift it up, when I'm most of the way through it, I can stand it up on end. So what we do then is, if it's an older bale, I stack them on pallets. If it's an older bale, we slough the outside off, throw it out on a manure pile, kind of like Jason and them used to have out back. We do the same type of thing. So we slough that off, and then we pitchfork. So we'll use, depending on the time of the year, we'll use a bale, somewhat frequently in a few weeks. But I have it under cover when it's standing on end. Like I said, I've had it on a pallet, and then I can provide them, loose hay to clean up a little faster. we've just found, even though it's more labor, it works for us. I'm actually gonna shut this water off. It feels excellent, honestly. I'm sure if my 4-year-old was out here, he'd probably be swimming in it right now. So like I said, just a little bit of how we do it. Don't mind some of this. When I was sick, some fence needs straightened back up. But as you can see, this feeder here, you can almost see that the legs are buried. And that pen sits kind of at a slope. And so it cleans up a little rougher, and usually all the hay accumulates to one side. But you know, that little, basically it's enough hay there to fill that feeder 1.5 times. That's been the waste over the last however many months we've had a goat in there. So I would say ultimately, if you can keep your goats from pulling the hay out of the top of these smaller feeders like this, you probably will get less waste than using a bale feeder. But you know, like in Jason's case, it looks like his feeder is quite a ways away from their barn or something, and that wouldn't be advantageous to pitchfork and clear back and forth. As you can see, for me, I just have to come from just inside this shed, you know, 35 yards maybe. And then when I come the other way, I come from the shed through my yard to right there. So at no given time am I going probably more than 70 yards, 80 yards with it. So it's not that far. So it just works for us. Like I said, when you're constantly moving animals, to drop a bale in one spot just didn't work for us anymore. So that's what we do. So like I said, that's just a little thing for Jason and any of his viewers on how we feed hay. We'll do the same thing when we do alfalfa. We can kind of cater it a little bit, but like I said, if you're in a position where you have some smaller pens or want to try it, I do recommend, as far as some bigger doe herds, you know, some of these North Star Boer Goats feeders, just because of the capacity is a little deeper, they're a little taller. And those legs are adjustable, I should say. I do have another one of these. So what they do is they have a square tube T, and then it's just got a set bolt in it. And so what you can do with those is you can run them to stick out so it doesn't tip over when the goats push it. Or if you need to set it up against a wall, you can actually turn the back to or something perpendicular with the wall so they don't hit. They do stick out a pretty good, I'd have to look, probably a good, no less than 8 inches. So they've got a pretty good ability not to tip. So I would recommend those. Like I said, the big bale feeder, that's just going to be your preference. So like I said, not a whole lot of other information right now besides it's hot. We've sold a few animals. We've still got Lucky M, the missing link, up on our website. He would be, I don't remember if I think he's a January buck out of Brett. And so he's younger guy, but he showed real well this season for us before I got sick. So we basically decided we're going to take the rest of the season off from showing as I continue to get through the end of this pneumonia. But he is still available. His first show of the season as the oldest buck in Iowa in the 0 to 3 class. He did get reserve grand overall. And I would imagine if we don't have it, we can get you his registration number if it's not on the website. I think he's the only animal listed under for sale. And those pictures, I believe, are from that first sale. So he's obviously grown since then. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to check in with you a little bit on this hay situation. And as something a little more interesting than me spraying pasture weeds and pulling trees with the tractor comes up, we'll be back. So have a good one. We'll see you later.